Hello, and welcome to Gaming with Soul. Searching for soul through the lens God damn it. It's now become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Searching through soul through the lens of video games and pop culture. Gaming and pop culture, not video games. We changed that from its original title.
Yes, because other games, there's more games than
Yeah.
just video ones.
Yeah, it's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy because now at the beginning of it, it's that brain thing of I have to remember it, I have to remember it, I have to remember it, which of course means I forget it.
Oh dear. What was
There's
your
been
name
several
again?
Bill. There's been several times when that was probably the worst name to choose for personal reasons. There's been several times when I will be like, all right, this is what it is. I'll say it in my head, and then I'll go to start and completely blank it. My name is Jamie.
And I'm Corin. All right.
Anyway.
So this time we're going to explore a new archetype. Joe, did you want to go into this one?
A little bit. Of course, you're still the expert on the actual archetype, but basically, we had a long discussion before this, and the archetype we're going into today is sovereign, which is king or queen or lord or those kind of titles, that kind of mindset. And generally speaking, in this kind of thing, we would do that one last because it's kind of the representation of standing in the power of all three of the others at the same time.
Sovereign is full embodiment of all other archetypes into its divine form.
Correct. We've decided to jump it ahead of the line because of the fact that this podcast deals with the lens of video game or lens of games and pop culture, and therefore it's easier to talk about this one than it is to talk about magician and lover when it comes to relating them back to those two things. Not to say it's impossible, and we are going to do it, but we figured we would do them in the order that they are most relevant to our topic. So hero, then sovereign, then magician, then lover, because it is very hard to find lover done well in pop culture. Well, probably less so in movies, but and games.
Yeah, I mean, magician we see around the place, and we will go into that one a little bit deeper. But sovereign is the more natural evolution because it really is the next step from warrior.
Yeah.
In a lot of your games, in a lot of the big adventure stories, the hero moves through hero, becomes warrior, and ultimately ends up as sovereign, as literally saves the land and ends up ruling it. I mean, let's look at Aragorn.
I have not finished that series. Oh.
From Lord of the Rings, Aragorn,
I was thinking
Yeah.
Aragon, which is a book about dragons.
Aragon, which is, yes. I know those books. I've got those books. My children and my husband have read those books.
I have read the first one. I have not read the other three. I did plan on getting them on Audible, but then I started down this necromancer trip, and I've actually been enjoying myself a lot on that book series.
But yeah, I mean, Aragorn is a good example. He kind of was the selfish hero, then turns into warrior, and then evolves into king.
Yeah.
And sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say it. Just another side random me bullshit moment. Yeah, the problem is I've seen the movies, but I couldn't get into the books because Tolkien drags on. So.
Yeah, look, I loved Lord of the Rings as the movies. I know the books are supposedly better, but Tolkien waffles.
Yeah.
He just waffles. He just waffles too much. He loses me.
I was trying to read one of them, and it got to the point where they went through like 3 days of travel and nothing happened, but yet it's like 8 pages long, and it's just like, I can't do this.
No, for me, it was they lost me with. I finished the first book, got halfway through the second one, and again, Tom Bombadil and the donkey and everything like that happened. It's like, why is this here? We are also going to talk from this perspective of sovereign. Okay, not king or queen. Now, there is king, queen, leadership, blah, blah, blah. We're going to call for sovereign. Now, the reason why I do this is, again, this is an embodied energy that anyone on the gender spectrum can embody. When you stand in the masculine sovereign, we are talking linear, intellectual, sort of straight line focus. When we are talking feminine sovereign, we are talking more emotional, more embodied, more from heart, and male sovereign is more from mind.
Yeah.
But if you actually dive down and look into archetypes as in king and queen, we don't like queen. Queen is actually very, very disempowering for women, because most of the time when queen is listed, it is wife-like. It's one of the first lists for queen, is she wants to be married and she wants to support her king, and then talks about feminine leadership in the same way. But this is why the whole king queen isn't used, especially in spirituality. The term you will see bobbing around is sovereign, because sovereign is equal leadership regardless of where you sit on the spectrum. So we will talk from the perspective of sovereign.
Yay.
Why is sovereign and leader so important in stories and gaming? Well, yes, the first part is a lot of the times your story concludes with your hero evolving into king or sovereign.
Yep.
But also in gaming and in gaming groups and games where there are guilds and things like that, leadership, sovereign leadership is so important. So guild leaders, people aspiring to be guild leaders, this one's for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've always said that I make a good officer and a terrible leader. I think that becomes less true the older I get. But
that's as you move from hero into warrior and stepping into sovereign. So that's your natural evolution that's happening.
Yeah. I still don't think I make a good guild leader, and the reasoning for that is I'm terrible at recruitment, and I'm terrible at that's where I fall short, and I know that. And again, part of it I think is knowing your shortcomings.
And that's it. A good leader can delegate.
Yeah, that's true.
They know their strengths and they know the strengths of their people. But let's just talk straight up. What are the typical aspects or attributes of what we would classify as sovereign? Well, the sovereign tends to be the center of their world, or of their kingdom, or of the group that they are leading. They are of it and above it, but ultimately the position of sovereign is to serve.
Yep.
They serve from the position of leadership. Too many people, because sovereign is actually the easiest of all the archetypes to corrupt.
Oh yeah,
definitely. That whole power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was actually going to say that exact same quote.
Yeah. And it is very, very true. It is very easy that the higher you get and the more power you get, the easier it is to be disconnected, disassociated from, and end up twisting. I mean, we see it with people who, I mean, this is more from a financial aspect, people that come from nothing and then build their way up financially to being millionaires and billionaires, lose touch. You know, they lose touch with that ground floor, with reality, because they've become so high or have so much that they have no idea what it's like to not have anything, or have forgotten what it's like to not have anything. Whereas when a true leader knows that they are there to serve, they are there to protect. That is one of the first things for sovereign. Sovereign protects their group, their kingdom, their queendom, their home. They protect. They gather people together.
Yep.
Okay. They create and they inspire activity in others. This is a big thing. A good leader inspires their people. It's that whole, no, don't do what I say, do as I do. It's that living from that embodied place and showing through, it's through embodying these aspects and doing it and showing, yes, this is not beneath me.
Yeah.
You know, a good leader should never ask of anyone what they're not prepared to do themselves.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean like there's a difference between being prepared to do something yourself and being able
I,
or proficient.
yes, there is the thing, I will do it. I will do it if I need to. But hey, I have this person here working with me who is better at it than I am.
Yep, exactly.
I will ask of them and share my strength with them and help them embody and help them rise up higher. That
Yeah,
is
and
good
that's
leadership.
yeah, and in a lot of stories that comes about like I've noticed in a fair amount of stories there's a turning point in a lot of leaders where they're either doing everything themselves and they're constantly doing everything themselves, and finally they get to that point where they realize, wait, they have to let go of their ego and be like, this person is honestly better than I am at this thing, and so
Yeah.
it makes more sense to give them that purpose.
There are a couple of reasons for that. I mean, this probably will go into aspects of shadow, but we won't delve too harsh into it. But often that independence comes from one of two places: either the fear that someone else will steal that power,
Yep.
but also to this hyper independence is actually a trauma response. The
Yeah.
whole I can't rely on anyone, I can't
Anyone
trust
else?
anyone,
Yep.
everyone lets me down. And
Yep.
it was a hard thing when I was a guild leader to start relinquishing control, because I had been let down so many
Yeah.
times.
And
I mean, that was
that's
an issue that we had when you first came in. It took me
correct.
a couple of weeks to let go enough to just let you do it. But that was
Yeah, and
because
then
everyone before you had failed.
yeah, and then there's still aspects of when I go to do it, and you're right there going, well, one, there was a couple times when I went to go do it, and you were right there going, well, I'll do it. And I'm like, I'm here and I'm doing it. And then there was a couple times when like I would oversleep, and then you'd be like, he forgot, and yeah, but
Again, though, that comes from my own trauma where I had been let down so many times, where people had dropped the ball, I had been relying on them to do something, and they fade out. Now, whether or not I will and manifest that, it's possible. There's a lot of programming in
yeah,
me and in my
and
family around that. But
yeah,
yeah, I was trained that, yeah, you can't rely on everyone. You've got to do it yourself,
yeah,
which just
and
burns you out.
there was a bit of teaching back and forth in there because you did help me grow to realize that yes, when people do, like I've always been, if somebody needs me, I will do everything I can.
Hmm.
But then there comes a point when you've been doing a thing for so long that it's just like I I have trouble. Like it's like
Yeah.
I've been doing this for so long, I blah blah blah, and you kind of taught me that while that's okay, I need
Mm.
to relay that.
Exactly. And this is one of the big things in gaming communities is when you've had enough of your role, tell someone.
Yeah,
If you've got this and you've been doing it for X amount of time and you either can't commit anymore because you've got too much going on in your life, your circumstances have changed, or quite simply you've moved beyond it, just own it.
uh-huh,
Just own it and say, you know what? Oh, look, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore.
yep,
And do it before you start dropping the ball rather than after.
yeah.
That's always a good thing.
I we usually put these disclaimers at the beginning. I'm putting it here just because I've noticed it a bit. Yes, she is breaking up a bit. That's again, we're recording this on the same night as the last episode, so there is still a storm in her area. And
There's been a
two,
storm here for 3 weeks.
yeah, that's
This is
fair.
unusual for Perth, but yeah, we've been very, very wet and woolly
Yeah.
of late.
And two, yes, I have probably yawned a few times. This is now 4 o'clock in the morning for me. So, granted, I am a night person. I generally don't go to bed till 5 or 6. Still, I do get a little yawny at this time.
But yeah. So going back a little bit, when you've got a leader or a sovereign in your life at that time, I mean, you lead. I'm getting all tongue tied now. I'm getting tired. Um,
It's like 4 in the afternoon or 5 in the afternoon for you.
yes, I know, but I've been a busy chickie.
That's
Um,
fair.
But yeah, the one thing you can always feel when it comes to, I mean, leadership, and whether this is part of your guild, whether this is a social group that you're a part of, you can always feel whether or not your leader is present.
Oh yeah.
If your leader is present and engaged, even if you're not the most sensitive person in the world, you can pick up on those
Oh yeah.
vibes.
This came through a lot in the card game we used to play, and even in my Final Fantasy 14 guild, it's coming through a lot because our actual guild leader is just absent, but he has been for a long time. So we kind of just consider his sister our guild leader. I've mentioned her a couple times. Unfortunately, recently she's gotten a job that's very physically demanding, so she's tired a lot of the time. And so she hasn't been as present, and you can tell. Like you can 100% tell from top to bottom in the guild. Most of the people just aren't on as much anymore. Even the officers are barely around anymore. And I don't.
It does happen.
Yeah. And I don't believe the guild is dying. I just believe we need to readjust is the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And that, I mean, that was the same thing for me when I was with our old card game, when I was an active leader. You know, the first 18 months to 2 years where I was fully engaged the entire time. This was why we had such a low turnover. This was why, you know, we had players who were clearly stronger than our guild stuck with us. Why people stuck with us for as long as they did, because the energy was there, the engagement was there, it builds the loyalty. And that's what a good leader will do. They will inspire loyalty because they show those leadership characteristics. But in games, I mean, in life in general, when you put that much, because let's face it, to be a guild leader in a competitive guild, it's a lot of fucking work.
oh yeah.
It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. There is recruitment. There's being on top of players. It's making sure your players are doing what they need to for the events. It's making sure everyone is present and happy and engaged and active. And although a lot of people, again, are not always aware of that, that whole thing, you put your heart and soul into it, is true. It is an energetic aspect that we put of ourselves into the containers that we hold. And that container in this circumstances are our guilds or our gaming groups.
Or
The
communities
leader
in general.
Yeah. Sporting groups, sporting clubs, it's the same deal. You are as engaged as the leader. Because if the leader doesn't give a shit, why the hell should you?
Exactly.
So it's one of those, it all sounds good and great to be, yeah, I'll be the guild leader and then I can boss everybody around and blah, 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 blah. That will only work if you have the time and the energy to dedicate to your guild. And I got to the point where, yes, I had been doing it for a while, so I was getting a little tired. But the other aspect was I had too much else going on. I didn't have as much spare time as I had had before, and I didn't have the energy and the effort to put into the guild like I could. And we could see the guild starting to struggle a little bit because of it. And then I got to the point, well, how many people are just here still because of me?
Yeah.
And so I gave everybody who wanted out by handing over leadership. I slowly weaned myself out, handed over to somebody else, and then cut my ties for 6 months. Well, actually, it wasn't even 6. I think it was maybe 3 or 4. Just
It wasn't very long.
To let people who wanted to retire but only hung around out of loyalty, give them permission to do that.
Yeah. And me, I just stopped.
Yeah, but you weren't the leader. And for me, it was that whole, once I was able to kind of hands off a little bit and not be stressing about it constantly, then I felt comfortable enough to go back. Because for me, I'm one of those people, it's just like, has somebody done this? Has somebody done this? Has somebody done this?
Yeah.
And it's even at the end, it was starting to bug me. So it's like, no, I need a complete break. I drifted for a little while. And then the guild I was in got nuked.
Yeah.
So I went back. But
Yeah.
it is a big. It sounds all glorious and wonderful to be the leader and to be in charge, but it's a lot of bloody work.
Yeah. And I think that's why I truly believe I make a better officer than a guild leader is I don't have the time to put into
Yeah.
that. I have so many balls in the air at any given
Uh-huh.
moment. And
Uh-huh.
my dumb butt doesn't go, hey, I have so many balls in the air. Maybe I should just not. I go, let's start a podcast. Like, just another ball, throw it up, see what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, that's kind of where I am now. But when I started off as the guild leader, that wasn't where I was. I had the time and I had the energy to put
Yeah,
into it. But then everything has shifted so dramatically that I barely have time to sit down and play my creed
yeah,
these
yeah,
days. I still haven't finished Valhalla. Well, actually, I've finished the main storyline. I haven't finished the side quests. Not the side quests,
yeah.
the add-ons.
And me, the little Norse boy, got like 10 minutes into it and went, I'm going to put this on the side for a while.
Yeah, I still think it has a lot to do with the triggery aspects of that game for those of us who have Norse in our souls.
Yeah,
It was I found it very triggery, but I went in knowing it was going to trigger a lot of, that karmic energy and karmic bring up. I loved it. Yes, no, I know it's a game and I know it's not historically 100% accurate, but they're bloody close.
yeah.
They're
Well, and
they're close enough to trigger, that's for sure.
what's weird is the new God of War. I got deep into that, and that was the Norse-based one. I got
Yeah.
deep into that, and like to the point where I was still in a PS4 community, and every time I'd get on, they're like, "Hey, come play Destiny 2 with us," and I'm like, "Nope, playing God of War." And they're just like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, "Yep, still just playing God of War." Um,
Didn't you
and
have issues with God of War 2 with how they portrayed the Norse and all that stuff?
sort of, I had issues with what they decided to do with Loki. And the fact that they made Freya and Frigg the same person, because that always feels wrong. That feels very wrong to me. Um,
Mm,
that was my two big problems. Is they made Freya and Frigg the same person, and Loki is spoilers. Loki is the child that you're working with the entire time. Who, like, you've killed half the gods at this point. Well, you only kill a couple, but you kill a couple of the gods, and then they're like, oh, and the child is Loki. And it's like, okay, so all of this fighting is starting, it has nothing to do with Loki. Like, and on top of it, like they had things like the world serpent, who is one of Loki's children, and the boy is like 12. And the world serpent isn't his child because he's 12, and that would be weird.
mhm.
So my issue with it comes down to, and don't get me wrong, I love the game. My issue with it though is they looked at Norse myth, went, that's a cool idea. We're gonna go do this other thing over here. And I'm not too surprised because they kind of did that with Greek myth too, in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Like the very first God of War, he follows the story of Heracles to a point.
Okay.
Um, and actually talking about Heracles, in a different episode, I realized he follows it way more than I thought he did, because he he is doing this because, now granted, Hera is the one who tricked Heracles,
Yep.
but Ares, I believe, in God of War, tricked Kratos into killing his wife and child.
Oh.
And so that's why he does everything he does. And like the reason his
Yep.
skin is so white is because he burned their ashes and he is covered in them.
Oh, jeez.
Or he burnt them and he is covered in their ashes. And stuff like that.
Ares,
So
the grandstander bully of the gods.
yeah, well, that's that. To be fair, God of War, the first, all of them until the newest one are about Kratos kills the entire Olympian pantheon. So God of War is literally about him just killing his way through the Olympian pantheon.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure he kills all of them too. Like my favorite is he kills Helios because he needs a flashlight.
Okay.
So he literally kills him to use his head as a flashlight.
Yay.
Hmm. Yeah. There is no
Oh,
happy
geez.
ending in that game.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
Well, like
Oh, dear.
there's a section of the game where they tell you that most of the humans are dead because of all the things he's done.
Oh, wonderful.
Anyway,
Oh, okay. So going back in, where's the thread? Where's the thread we need to follow? That's right. One of the big parts of sovereign and one of the big elements, I mean, especially when you look at king of old, if we're going to split these into the masculine and feminine ever so briefly, when you look at king, you know, the sort of king, father, emperor, high supreme ruler aspect, especially when you're looking at mythology of old, that high king energy, he was a promiscuous bastard.
yeah,
You look at especially Zeus. I mean, Zeus is really renowned for it, but
yeah,
any of the old king gods were never faithful to their wives, never. And that was because the old world ideal of king archetype was, or the actual thing of masculine virility had a lot to do with his sexual dominance and sexual
yeah,
prowess. So the idea was, and this is an interesting thing when you look at the old world gods, the kings of the gods, yes, went around having sex left, right, and center with anything and everything. Whereas the dark god, the dark one, I mean, Hades in particular, he had one lover.
yeah. See,
One.
this is where Norse stands out as a little different to me, but go
Mm.
on. Well,
No,
it's
what we
Odin in all of the stories only slept with his wife, and there's one other story where he slept with somebody else, and that's it.
but
Those are the only two.
isn't Thor from some Thor's not Friggs.
That depends. I think you are right. I believe Thor is Mother Gaia or something. I forget. I will have to look.
Thor was an earth, I believe he was an earth giantess. I don't know what her name was, or I can't remember her name, but
Yeah.
no, Odin was promiscuous too. Perhaps
Yeah, but
not
they
as
don't
much
talk
as
about it.
Zeus.
Well, yeah, but they also don't talk about it as much. That's the thing. You know, it's not.
But again, Odin was seen as feminine. He had a
Oh yeah.
feminine aspect associated with
The,
him. So
the,
his sexuality might not have been as dominant
yeah.
because of that aspect.
And I think that's kind of my point, though, is that, and then you mentioned the dark god is faithful, except Loki is the promiscuous one.
Mm,
Loki has 3 different kids with a mistress and a kid with a horse.
yeah. But Loki wasn't keeper of the underworld.
That is true.
And it is the underworld god that was never promiscuous.
Yeah, the underworld god in Norse myth is one of Loki's ill-begotten children,
Children. Exactly.
and
But
she was
in classical, in Egyptian, and in Greco-Roman,
yeah,
the dark god, the ruler of the underworld, was the only one that tended to be faithful to his wife.
and that's fair. Of course, Norse myth, the tender of the underworld is a female, and I believe she never takes a lover ever.
No, I don't think she
Partially because
does either.
she's half a corpse, but
Mm. It's the focus. That's her job. That's her role. She's almost like Athena in a lot of ways. Pallas Athena. She is the keeper
yeah,
because Pallas Athena is. I mean, yes, she was a bit of a warrior goddess, but she ultimately is the keeper. She's a protector, not so much out to attack, but to defend and justice as well.
yeah,
But again, depending upon the stories, because there are so many different ways to weave them. But the whole point of pointing out why, again, the Dark King or the ruler of the underworld was seen to be faithful or only have one wife was actually a statement against his sexuality and his prowess, that he was not as potent as the High King. The High King could go out and have sex with everybody that he wanted, and the Under King could not. He wasn't man enough, kind of deal. Whereas, of course, you flip it by modern standards, it's like, we don't want Mr. Promiscuous out there. Just, give us the Dark King. Give that dark masculine energy. It's far, far more enticing. And again, dark as in those hidden, repressed. The dark masculine energies are often men who are still very masculine but have a lot of feminine embodiment. They're in touch with themselves and in touch with their emotions and in touch with their creativity and in touch with their femininity. These are aspects that are often associated as dark masculine because they're forbidden and hidden.
Yeah.
But again, we're kind of digressing just a little bit here.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons, the reason I digressed in that direction, though, was to highlight one particular issue, which is one of the roles of old world king. And it is tied into virility and sexuality, because the old world ways of doing this was horrid. But once upon a time, it was very, very important for people to get the blessing of their sovereign. The sovereign had the ability to bless, to share their power. Now, they could bless that with a simple, I bless you, this is your title now. They could bless them with property. They could bless them with money. They could bless them with titles. They could bless them with all manner of power. And it was become a very, very big part of, again, the rite of passage, where without a healthy sovereign to stand over and guide through rite of passage, this is where evolution gets warped, where masculine or feminine evolution gets warped, without that proper guidance to guide across. Because, of course, there's notable kings that abused that blessing power. There's some lovely stories about a fantastic emperor by the name of Caligula, who was notorious for abusing this power. Henry VIII was another one who was notorious for abusing any number of many of the old world kings, where they would go out and it's like, bless my marriage, and it was the king's right to actually have sex with the bride before the groom did. That's how he blessed the marriage. That's, again, going into that shadow aspect of. But being from a modern day perspective, standing in that sovereign and offering blessings from that leadership simply comes through you giving a damn about the people that are in your care.
Yeah.
Giving a blessing to one of your fellow players can be as simple as checking in on them. Hey, haven't seen you much lately. Are you okay?
Yep.
Hey, saw you did this. Are you okay? That is how we modern day instill a blessing, especially on someone we can't see physically. Let's face it, most of our guilds and things are online. We don't know these people physically. But if you feel something might be off with one of your people, your best way to bless and empower is to just reach out to them.
Yep.
To say, hey, I'm paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah, that is 100% true. Real quick tangent. You are correct. I was kind of correct too. Thor's mother is Jord, who is the personification of Earth. So when I said Mother Gaia, that's just how my brain remembers that.
That was where your brain translated it. But I knew she was an Earth giantess.
However, I don't 100% agree with what this page is telling me, because it says one of Frigg and Odin's children is Tyr, and I know for a fact Tyr is actually the son of two giants. Because there's a Norse story, a very famous Norse story, about them visiting Tyr's parents to steal the pot for making mead.
Yep.
But
I think the thing too. Sorry.
Huh?
Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say Tyr's dad is the king of the frost giants, if I remember correctly.
The issue that Norse has some similarities to some of the stuff with Egypt. Now, Egypt, the same deity or the same energetic appears and reappears and has different meanings depending upon the era. Because of course,
Yeah.
Egyptian mythology goes like 5,000 years before most other written history, and there's this is why there's two Horuses in Egyptian. You've got
Yeah.
Horus, the elder god, who is the husband of Hathor, and you have Horus, the younger god, who is the son of Isis. And
Yeah.
the symbolism is similar and blah blah blah, but that's simply because, again, 5,000 years of evolution. The Norse belief system is not just Norse. I mean, there's Danish, there's elements of Swedish, there's the Ostrogoths, and all the other things are all wove into this. So as it evolved, it's like whose version of the story evolved through, or which one became more prominent, which is why if you read this thing, this god can be the child of this one and this one, but if you read this thing, it's actually the brother of this one and the child of that one. Yeah, so basically we're just talking about, I've kind of digressed into mythology, but again, this is where sovereign really comes through. When you're looking at the old world religions, especially things like Norse, which is a collection or a gathering of old world knowledges. It's like, Odin was also Woden and had different names. Thor was
Yeah.
also Donna, depending upon the region and the dialect and the time and the era. So this is where we see, is it this or is it this or is it, again, let go of all of these specifics, because it's about the story. It's about the embodiment of the archetype. It's about those elements that help you connect to those archetypes, to those energies. Egyptian did it the same way. I mean, there was Horus, the elder god, who was the son of Ra and the wife of Hathor. But then there's also Horus, the younger god, who was the son of Isis and Osiris. And his symbolism is very similar, but of course, one was old kingdom, one was new kingdom, upper, lower. They kind of blend, and it can be hard and things. Which is true? Well, all of them. It depends on the region where we draw our power and we draw our connection from these stories. And we connect into those elements of it. And I mean, a sign as to whether or not these things and these stories and these connections have any power or have any meaning to help you find these aspects within self, because that's what they're all about, is to identify these archetypes and to help ourselves find and embody the divine and to recognize and assimilate the shadow.
And again, bringing it back to leadership, it's, I was going somewhere.
Well, as we said, the blessings. The blessings is a big part of leadership. It's the reaching out and the showing your people that you care. No, you don't have to go and spend oodles of money. I mean, this was a silly thing that we saw in our throwdown game, where there were guilds that would give money, give Google credit, would give things like that if you played and if you participated, to try and hang on to their big players.
Yeah.
The thing was, it didn't buy them any loyalty.
No. Because
that's
the issue,
you can't buy loyalty.
Yeah, because the issue, especially in situations like that, as soon as the money runs out, everyone just leaves because they're only there for the money.
Exactly. The moment that incentive goes, they'll bugger off and go and play with their mates.
Yeah.
And that is the true way of it. Is the only loyalty you can only earn it in these games, and the only way to earn it is by giving a damn.
Yeah.
And
to be fair, you can give all the damn you want, you will still lose people. Like, that is still a thing that will happen.
This is true too. I mean, you cannot run a guild and not expect to have some turnover of players.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. You just got to not take it personally. In hell, Throwdown was something I've played longer than I've played any other bloody game. I put as much time into that one as I have in several of the others. The other thing a good leader or a good sovereign
gonna bring up that, you know, because you just said that the only game you really played was Throwdown like that, and I come from a very extensive MMO background. By that I mean I played a lot of World of Warcraft, which I know there are many other. I mean, I tried a couple of the others, like I played Rift when it came out, and that game was interesting, but it didn't have that thing. And I played the Lord of the Rings one. That one was really weird, partially because as a rogue was you turned into a rock, which was just weird. And like I played a lot of them, and I have a hard time finding guilds to begin with, but that's personal reasons. But I've noticed, like you said, guild leaders who care are the ones where I stuck around for a while. And as soon as you pull away some of that veneer and see why they care is what really gets you to stick and not. Because like a great example is, so I was a raid leader for one of my WoW guilds, and I left that WoW guild in the end because I realized they cared more about like certain aspects, like what each person could do for them, than they actually cared about the people. And this shows when we tried to do a classic raid, and one person kept wiping the party over and over again. And when I finally, and it was on the fifth time, or the third time I called them out directly, the fifth time I got kind of aggravated about it. The first two times I was very kind, and I was like, hey, make sure you're following this mechanic. I mean, pay attention, make sure you're following this mechanic. And the third time I called out the person who was doing it. And the fifth time I was like, dude, seriously, I've called you out by name, pay attention. And I got pulled aside by the guild leader afterwards, and they said, hey, they pay for our Ventrilo server, so you can't talk to them like that.
Yeah.
Which literally means you can't do your job, which is lead this raid to victory, because it is more important that this person keeps paying literally like $5 a month. And now that Discord's a thing, Ventrilo kind of died. I actually don't know. People might still use Ventrilo, but in my opinion, why would you use one where you have to pay X amount of money for a server every month when you can use the one that's free? But granted, Discord has its problems. But like, and my current guild, like, Karada seems to actually care. Now, granted, she's got her own shit going on.
Yeah.
And so there are times where she's kind of like, I can't deal with this right now, and vanishes. But she cares for the most part.
Yeah.
And you cared when you ran that guild, and Nem cared. Nem is still probably one of my favorite WoW guild leaders. Anyway, yes, you were my favorite guild leader. Don't be like that.
No, I wasn't even going there.
That was a joke. Nem is one of my favorite guild leaders because he understood all of us. He understood what we were best at, where we and like all of his officers, he knew exactly what each one was good at and what each one was going to do. It got to be a running joke because I was my best role, and why I always say I'm good at it. I was the enforcement officer. I was the one who enforced the rules. And one of my favorite moments is every time we would have an officer meeting, it was always, Jay, be nicer to people. And like, he said it in such just he's tired of getting this complaint. He doesn't actually want me to change. He's just sick of people bitching. Kind of.
You've just got to say something about it.
It's like, this is on my notes. I have to say it. I don't really want to say it, but you know, people are complaining, so here it is. And to be fair, yes, I was a bit of a hard ass at the time, but at the same time, it's like, if you can't follow the rules, what are you doing? Like, they weren't even hard rules.
Well, I mean, one of the big things that will always make a leader, well, it's always a good sign to whether or not you were good at your job as a leader, is whether or not there's a legacy.
Yeah.
And it can be a hard thing to track in gaming, but a legacy is more along the lines of when you have left your guild and you go back and they're still running things the same way.
Yeah.
Where the way you've had things set up is the way people continue to
Yep.
work things. I mean, hell, I'm not even an officer in guild anymore, and I'm still mama.
Yep.
You know, you
Well,
come back in and it's like, yeah, here's mama's back. So it's that lasting, lingering influence that you did something so well that even without you, it carries on.
Yeah.
That is true. True sovereign will leave those kinds of energies behind. But one of the things about, and it's probably one of the hardest actual jobs of standing in true sovereign is this thing about being decisive.
Yeah.
A true leader, when you stand in your true sovereign power, whether it be masculine, whether it be feminine, if you want to be in that power, you've got to be able to make your decisions.
Yep.
You've got to be able to make the hard decisions. Make
Correct.
those decisions that really suck.
Yeah. You also, though, have to be able to admit that the decision you made might be flawed and take the advice of your advisors.
Yes. You need to be able to take advice. You need to be able to, well, let's face it, every decent sovereign has advisors. That's what the magician is. That's the next one that we will be talking about. But the advisors, the wisdom, those that have been there, done that, don't want to lead anymore, but have plenty of wisdom to share with others. So that advisor is definitely important. But the whole thing about making the decisions is even in the lack of, when there is no advisor, when it is just the sovereign standing in their own set and they've got to make the hard decisions, you've got to make them. Even when you look at them going, someone is going to get hurt no matter what I do, you've got still got to make that decision. It's going to suck and you'll hate it, but that's what it means.
But you got to do it.
That's what it means to be a sovereign, is to make the shitty decisions.
Yeah.
And it's like, am I going to choose loyalty of this person over the team? It's like, this person's been a little bit flaky, but they've been promising that we're going to come back and play, but we're still waiting, we're still waiting, we're still waiting. And the team is like, hey, we need someone else.
Yeah.
So you've got to do what's right. You've got to make those good calls for the best of everyone, even when it's going to make you unpopular.
Yeah. And I think that's where like Nem shined as a leader, is he could easily, he'd be like, well, this is the decision I've made. And if as officers we were like, hey, this is the point that you missed, or this is the thing, he would look at it again. And sometimes he'd be like, well, that's great, my decision stands. And we just go, it's fair, and walk away. And other times he'd be like, you have a point, I'll change it, and this is it now. And he was really good at that. He eventually burned himself out and quit, which is why the guild fell apart. But
which is where I was getting to too. I was getting so burnt out. But I did the masochist thing, which was I dug in deep and I sacrificed and I sacrificed and I sacrificed until I got to the point of, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah. And I think that's where my current guild leader, Karada, fails a bit, is I think she has a hard time making some of the tough choices because she just wants everyone to be happy.
Yeah.
And that's
which
fine.
Again, it's one of those things too that as a feminine we're kind of programmed to do, to keep people happy. And again, this is one of those big things that we're trying to help. Through the strange doorway of games and stories, as to we're also trying to empower people by making you guys more aware of this stuff, because when you're aware, you can make the changes.
Which, to be fair, I don't think she has a hard time making the decision. I think she has a hard time executing it. And that's where delegation is a huge thing, which is why we're trying to set up a better infrastructure, because she knows that, well, yes, she can make that hard decision. She has a hard time executing it. I have no fucking problem executing a hard decision.
Yeah, which is why I got you to do a lot of my hard stuff as well. And it was because you were good at that. That was a natural thing for you, whereas for me, it was more natural to just, try and keep everybody coherent working unit.
Yep. And with me, it's and I've learned this from taking stock of my own sovereign traits. It's my issue is I can get a little cold sometimes. And so generally speaking, and that's not always true, and that becomes less true more recently. But I do,
Yeah.
I get a little cold sometimes. And so I'm good at delegating, being like, hey, sometimes it's even, hey, I was kind of an ass. Please make sure this person is okay.
Yeah.
And I've had to make that delegation. I've had to make that where I'm like, hey, I probably came off a little too hard. Please, can you make sure they understand what I mean? I'll have a hard time words sometimes. But
it's all part of that journey, as well as you're learning to express yourself, because yes, the
where
emotional lockups and things like that. Yeah.
where I have no problem making the hard decision either, though. Like, I have no problem making it or executing it. I'm the guy who literally, back to the whole NEM guild, and when I was that officer, one of my favorite stories I like to tell, and again, that's part of what this podcast is for, is telling stories. There was a person who helped found the guild. Like, he was one of the founding members, but he was kind of a wank pheasant. That's just how I'm going to describe him, and we're just going to go with it. And he left the guild, and by left I mean I threw him out because he was being an asshole constantly. And he went and did a bunch of other things with a bunch of other guilds, and then one day he hopped back in our vent chat and just went into our officers channel. And I popped in there and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm waiting to talk to Nem. And I said, okay, then you message Nem and talk to him privately. You don't come into our officer channel. And he's like, I belong in this channel. Do you know who I am? I go, motherfucker, I know exactly who you are. Do you know who I am? Get out of the officer channel. And he's like, whoa, hey, calm down. And I'm like, no, you're the one who came in here and you're swinging your weight around like you're some kind of big shot when you fucked us over a while ago. And I'm not going to sit here and take it anymore. You fucked your chance. I'm done. Get out. And he got all pissy and he got out of the vent chat and he reported it to Nem later. And Nem pulls me aside and he goes, yeah, he wanted to rejoin and take over as one of the high officers. I told him no, that we don't need him in that way anymore. And he threw a temper tantrum. You did the right thing. And I'm like, I know I did, because I know what I'm doing.
It's well, not quite similar. I mean, I when I remember when your guild merged with mine.
Yeah.
And the guild leader of your particular guild came in, and she was fiery, to say the least.
Yeah, she was something.
Let's be nice about this and just simply say that she was a fiery. She had some issues, and I tried to help. But when she got into a big fight with you, and then came storming to me going, oh, I can't be in the same guild as this person, blah, 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 blah. I'm just like, well, that's fine. No one else has got a problem with them. And I don't kick people for personal disputes.
Yeah.
And she legitimately tried to pull every one of her people out of my guild and destroy me.
Yeah.
However, she had already created this persona that she was a little bit erratic and she would fly into her temper tantrums and things like that. Come into our guild where everything is we just always made the joke, it's just like Zen light calm. We had the Zen light calm in our guild where it's just like you come in, you hit when we ask you to, you do, you're good. That's it. We're not, no pressure to spend, no pressure to do this, just participate in guild events. Please just follow instructions. You're good. And you were afraid that she was going to pull everybody. You were quite scared that she was going to pull like 7 or 8 people and it was going to leave us floundering. And I'm just like, they're not going to go.
Yeah, because I remember outright saying that, hey, if it's that big of a problem, I'll just go. Like, I'll make that sacrifice. It doesn't.
She legitimately ended up leaving with 2 accounts. One was hers and one was her daughter's.
Yeah.
And this one poor guy who was her primary officer, who I
Uh-huh.
legitimately had said to him, look, mate, if she's putting the hard push on you, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, if she's going to make your life a living hell, then it's okay. You go. Know that you've always got a friend here, you've always got a place here, but you do what you got to do. And so we legitimately only lost like 3 people, which we were able to fill up with alts and things.
Which was
But
really
that,
funny. I was just gonna say, which is really funny because he was only her primary officer, because he was the only one who would listen to her and leave with her. Because back before then, I was technically the primary officer.
yeah, yeah. But he was like the last, and she was putting the hard push on. And I just said, look, if she's making it hard, you go. Know that I've got no
Yep.
hard feelings. We've got no hard feelings. You ever need a home, you know where we are. And
Yep.
it was fine. We kind of never heard boo from her again. I think she kind of tried to stir up some trouble for me a couple of times,
Oh
but
yeah,
I
couple
had
times.
established such a reputation in the game that nobody believed her.
Yeah. Yeah, she tried to start a couple different problems here and there. She tried to start a couple problems with me, and I just ignored her.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole big reason for it was she had a crush on a guy who was taken,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was part of it. So she kind of like she started sacrificing everything for that, for
Yeah.
this ideal, like treating everybody like crap. And I called her out on it. I was like, what the hell, are you doing this because you have a crush on this person? And she's like, no, I don't, blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, so he has a girlfriend and no interest in you. And so she kind of threw a temper tantrum.
Oh,
I
yes,
also remember
yes.
she very accurately called me intense.
Yeah, well, she tried to go around telling everybody in the game that I stole her people and stole her guild.
Yep,
And
I
there was
remember
only
that too.
one person I think that bought that, and it was just simply because they didn't know me.
Yep,
Everyone else just blew it off, saying, "No, that wouldn't have happened."
yep,
And it's just simply because I had this. No, this is just we just kept our heads clean, our noses clean, and just kept playing. No,
yeah,
my focus was on the people. My focus was on the guild, and we created this container that even now, even though it's not as potent as it was, it's still a very, very healthy functioning guild 4 or 5 years
good,
down the track.
good.
So
I haven't been paying attention to it, so
yeah, like I said, I jumped back in, and our founder is back in with us now. I'm
yeah,
not sure how long
I
he's
remember
going to
that.
stick around for, but the
Yeah,
original founder is back in guild with us, which is, if he behaves himself, it'll be nice. But
yeah,
this is what sovereign is. This sovereign is putting people, is your people first, duty first. The
yeah,
idea of being a leader is not to have people put you on a pedestal and worship you. The idea of leader is for you to take charge to serve the group. A
yeah,
leader needs to be a warrior. There is always warrior in sovereign. You
yeah.
cannot be a sovereign without having a little bit of warrior, because you need to be able to fight the good fight. You need to be able to defend your people.
Three dog. Anyway, yeah, there's that.
So sovereign needs wise man, needs wise woman,
Yep,
magician,
yep. I was going to say that.
medicine man, medicine woman. Yeah.
I was going to say, because you need, as I kind of look at it, you need the warrior passion and the warrior willingness to fight that fight, but you need to temper it with the wisdom of wise man, and you have to
Mm,
have the compassion for your people that comes from lover.
yes. The love, the passion, the creativity that comes from emotion.
Hmm.
To stand in that kind, to want to nurture, to foster, to help things grow and enrich, because lovers enrich, they bring
Yep,
passion. And so again, a good leader, a good sovereign standing in that will awaken the passions within their people. It ties into that creativity, their ability to inspire others to be more. A good leader inspires their people to be greater than they were,
yep,
inspires them to stand in by honoring and by blessing and by encouraging that growth.
Yeah.
The sage, let's face it, a good leader needs to have wisdom. They need to be able to think. The
Yep.
masculine sovereign is logical. He thinks analytically, practically, for the betterment on high. Feminine sovereign is emotion and embodied, not from the emotional irrational, but emotion compassion. She
Yep.
loves and nurtures. She helps things grow. It's like the highest ideal of divine mother, where
Yep.
she is compassionate and soft and gentle, but not weak. She has that fire and that strength that can protect just as much. Think mama bear kind of energy. Beautiful, gentle, warm, but has that ferocity to protect and defend as well.
Yeah.
But whenever and simply we will just shift the masculine stands more in that logical, straight line, linear, analytical, whereas the feminine is the more flowing, emotional, compassionate. It's embodiment versus transcendence. Transcendence is masculine, embodiment is feminine.
Yep.
It's the old Mother Earth, Father Sky kind of deal. That's where that masculine, feminine energy. The feminine is that whole Kundalini rising, which is serpentine from the earth, whereas masculine is like the bolt of lightning from sky.
And remember, of course, feminine and masculine doesn't mean male and female, but
no. Again, we're talking those energetics. Every single person needs to embody both. Every single person needs to find that balance of both. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say because Nem was a good chunk of both.
Yeah.
He was very nurturing. He also hit on me constantly, which was funny as crap. To be fair, he was gay. Like he was super gay.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it that way because like he was my favorite kind of gay, who is he's gay, he knows he's gay, he tells everyone he's gay, and you best believe he is gay. Like I love Nem so much. My favorite,
Beautiful
one of
that it
my
could
favorite,
be so embodied in it.
one of my favorite moments about it too was somebody called him a faggot, and everyone in the guild, like every guild member, snapped to attention, was like, all right, you're done, get out of our group, because it was during a raid. And we're like, you're done, just get the fuck out of here, we don't want you here. And Nem is laughing his ass off, and we're like, what's so funny? He goes, well, he's right. Like, he's like, I wasn't even offended, the rest of you got all up in arms, I didn't give a shit.
It's an interesting term, faggot, because it wasn't originally a derogatory to homosexuals. Originally, it had something to do with the lowliest people in society bundled the sticks, bundled the faggots for firewood. And that was the whole thing. That's the technical. It's like they bundled them up, and people that did that, and the lowliest of society were labelled that. So it has been the dregs of society. And of course, it then ended up moving to the homosexual, which was horrible, but it's beautiful that it's not the terms anymore. We're evolving.
Yeah.
Well, most of us are. A good portion of us are. A good portion of us are. Enough of us are.
Yeah.
Enough of us are waking up.
And that's one of my favorite Nem stories too, because that also shows like his people were very much willing to defend him without him even asking.
Yeah.
Like he didn't ask for it. He wasn't hurt anything. We just defended him because he was Nem and we loved him. And I apologize if you hear a door opening. But we loved him and we cared for him. And like it was so sad when that guild died, but it came to its end.
And that sometimes it's the best thing you can do as a leader if you cannot find someone to take over your guild and run it the way you want it to be run. If your time is done, sometimes the best thing you can do is disband.
Yeah, exactly. And to go back to him being very much secure in who he was, his full name in game was Nemian. And I asked him one day what it meant, and he said, read it backwards. It was literally, I'm in men. And then he had an alt who backwards was men in men. Yeah. I love that man. I would have followed him to the end of forever. He was such a great guy. Nem is the like he was the sovereign in a lot of ways. He embodied both the masculine and the feminine version. He had that focus and that, logical side, but he also was very compassionate for his people.
Being leader of guild taught me a lot about sovereign. It taught me a lot that I had to make the shitty calls. It taught me a lot of stuff that I didn't really want to do because I was such a people pleaser. But in order to serve, I had to. And as hard as it was something that I had to do. And I will say that it was part of a big period of growth for me. Was taking, and not just taking on the role, but taking it seriously. And yes, I know it was just a stupid game for a stupid phone game, just a stupid little thing. It wasn't a big, but it was still a big thing, and it changed my life. This silly little phone game changed my life.
Yeah.
So don't let anyone ever tell you something is silly and pointless and meaningless, because you have no idea what it is that will change your life.
Like, wow, changed mine in a big way. And the phone game changed mine in a big way too, because it introduced me to you, which set me on this whole path.
Throwdown. Okay, animation throwdown. If anyone wants to know what phone game we're talking about animation throwdown. Okay, that's how silly it was.
Yeah. The problem is, though, the reason I stopped playing it is it started to become more about the money, and I was like, all right, I'm done. As soon as it hit that point, I was like, eh.
Yeah, it's a bit stupid like that. But in saying that, I haven't spent any money on it for years now. Yeah. I mean, I did probably have spent more on it than I had spent on any other game ever, but I have been playing it for nearly 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's ever since it came out, what, 2000? No, it's 4 years, 2017, 2016, something like that. Anyway, so I've been playing it basically about 3 or 4 months in since it started. And it was huge, but it changed. This silly little phone game changed my life.
Yeah.
And there is so much magic and so much power to be found in mundane things that a lot of people, especially those on a spiritual path, will discount.
Yep. And that's part of this. This is part of why we're doing this podcast, is to point this stuff out to people.
Exactly. Magic of the mundane, evolving and awakening in the modern world. Let's face it, not everyone has the opportunity to go and live in a yurt in the middle of the forest for a year to connect with nature and become a shaman. We don't all have that opportunity. And let's face it, some of us don't bloody want to. Sure. I'm rather attached to plumbing.
I could take it or leave it.
Yeah, it's easier for men to do that. But as a woman, I have become rather attached to plumbing. So living that close to nature doesn't quite appeal to me. Put me in a beautiful cabin in the middle of the forest with plumbing, awesome. But yeah, I need a little bit of my mod cons. And this is the whole thing, is in modern ways, we need to find modern ways to connect to soul. And our stories... Yeah, our games are a big thing. Ooh, the weather's just coming nasty.
Yay.
Rain is real. Oh, it's raining so hard, it's coming under the eaves and smashing my window. So if you can hear a lot of noise in my background, it's the rain.
We should probably bring this to an end then.
It is, because my minions are getting restless.
Restless. They might become zombies soon.
Or maybe one will eat the other and then I'll only have one to feed.
Fair enough.
We call it monkey knife fight nights.
Yeah.
What's for dinner? Monkey knife fight. No.
Fair enough.
But yeah, strive to stand in that sovereign power, people.
Yeah.
Align all aspects of self.
Especially if you plan to do any sort of leadership role.
Yeah.
Like
guild. Being leadership. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Fire team, raid, work, your working lives. your
Yep.
lives outside of the console or the PC or the whatever you game on.
And especially if you have aspirations to take up a leadership role in society.
Yep.
Let's face it, we can all declare that there is very few true sovereign in politics. And we need
Dear
it.
Lord.
We need real sovereign. We
Don't
need
get
real
me
empowered in politics.
Don't get me started on that three-ring circus that America's politics have become recently. Don't even wanna.
And I would say that for the most part of Australia as well, except we're here in Western Australia, we're rather fond of our leader.
Yeah.
He's done a great job during COVID, so we love him. We love Mr. McGowan right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, our PM and some of the other state leaders, monkeys.
Mhm.
Monkeys. They're all just monkeys. But
We're all
yes,
just monkeys in the end.
but at the end of the day, people, if you wish to be a leader, stand in that sovereign power, embody, and remember to be leader is to serve.
Yep.
Because if you remember that, then your ego will never, you can't corrupt an ego that is there to serve.
Yeah. And that's a great take on that. Yeah, that about wraps this episode up. We're also running dangerously close to our longest episode, and 2, our end of recording, like before Anchor's just like, you're done. You're just done.
Remember though, you've got that chunk at the front to record take out this time though.
Oh, I know. Like I said, our recording time, not our end result time. So I was, any questions, comments, complaints, difficulties, you can always reach us at the newly minted Gaming with Soul podcast at gmail.com. I won't promise I'll respond, but I'll definitely read most of them.
And
of course,
always reach out. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, or you can always reach out to us and find us and connect to us with the Gaming with Soul on Facebook. We have a Facebook page and a more intimate group where you can come in, join our community, be a part of it, share your stories, your takes on things, ask us questions, and come and join us there.
Yep. Now, of course, I definitely won't read your email if your headline is something like "you stupid assholes," because I don't care. Going back to the I don't do non-constructive criticism. It's a waste of my time and yours, just so you're aware.
Yeah, don't poke the bear. Trust me, just don't poke the bear. Not worth it.
Yeah, because I get too many of those, and you'll have a lovely rant episode that none of you will listen to.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fair. And if you
Yeah.
send anything like that to me, I'll let you deal with him.
Yeah, pretty much. Also check out the Gaming with Soul Discord. Assuming that's not taken when I go to make it later, because that's still on my list of things to do. And if it is taken when I go to make it later, I will either edit around this or let you know in a future episode.
We'll put it up on our other platforms, so hopefully you'll be able to find that out.
Yeah, because I'll have open links here and there.
Yep.
Either way,
awesome.
Yep. My phone is about to die, and your minions are about to eat each other. So
yes.
We should probably call this one an episode.
I think so. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Have a lovely day.
You take care of you.